I'm a very big believer in this transformational change. I do think it is akin to the Industrial Revolution 150 years ago, the technological revolution. I mean, the Industrial Revolution was physical machines, mechanical machines. The technology revolution was computational machines. And this revolution, which I like to think of it as the reasoning revolution, is about these reasoning machines.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of MUFG in Conversation. My name is Priya Rajan. I'm the Managing Director responsible for National VC coverage at MUFG Tech Banking Group. Today, I'm super thrilled to join by someone who has played a foundational role in building both Madrona Venture Group and the broader Seattle tech ecosystem, Matt McElwain, Managing Director at Madrona Ventures. Matt, it's such a pleasure to have you with us.
Priya, it's an absolute pleasure. Look forward to our conversation.
Amazing. Let's kick things off with the kind of your personal journey to start off. You've been a key architect in the fund's evolution and the broader Seattle tech scene, which we're going to dive in much deeper as we go through. But what drew you to venture and what has kept you energized over the years?
Well, it's interesting because I started out on the East Coast and actually did some investment banking, management consulting, and then was in an operating company. And that operating company had all these B2B businesses in the 90s when the internet was disrupting almost everything. And I met the Madrona team, and Madrona was based in Seattle, had a very close relationship. One of our partners was on the board of Amazon, having been the first investors there. And so we looked at doing some joint ventures, and those didn't quite work out. It was the wrong time. But then the Madrona team said, hey, why don't you come out and be a part of our team? This is still very early days in 2000. And I just, absolutely loved the team and the opportunity to be in venture here in Seattle. And that was 25 years ago.
You recently announced your largest fundraising today. Congratulations, especially in this market. How has your investment thesis evolved over time, and what themes are you excited about today in Fund 10 and also the Acceleration Fund that you have?
Yeah, so we're 30 years old. It's our 30th anniversary year. And I've been here for 25 of those years. We are now investing, as you mentioned, out of Fund 10 in something we call Acceleration Fund 4. And here's the basic idea. Madrona in the early days was pretty much early stage Pacific Northwest focused companies broadly in technology. And the ways that we've expanded over time is about 10 years ago, we started realizing, hey, we're here with the Amazons and the Microsofts and quite a bit of innovation. And of course, there's times where companies, after they find product market fit, can be anywhere that are the best companies in the world, and we could really help them too. And so that's when we started investing in more mid-stage companies, Series Bs and Series C rounds, companies like Snowflake and UiPath and Accolade and others. And then the other addition is that we opened up an office in Silicon Valley 3-4 years ago, got a great team down there, very complementary to our core team up here in Seattle, because we always want to be on the edge of, kind of triangulating access to founders and information and ideas. And while we've got an incredible base here, we wanted to have that complete picture in that team. So that's the second. The third thing is about 7 or 8 years ago, we added some life sciences meets AI. And we're going to talk about AI, I'm sure. We just see that as another vertical market, life sciences, and then even a subcategory, a related category of healthcare and AI and that intersection. And the intersection there has really led to some incredible breakthroughs. So we wouldn't have done healthcare and life sciences a decade ago, but now we do make some selective investments in that area too.
Great, thank you. And, I was in Seattle for the Seattle Tech Week, and Madrona is known for its deep company building ethos, and I felt it talking to founders there that you guys have backed from almost day dot to today. How do you balance that early stage conviction that you have with now the growth stage discipline, especially in today's market?
Well, the great thing about being involved from day one in companies is that you see all the different phases of the journey. And sometimes there's things like the systems inside the company or the way the company communicates or the way they're trying to scale functionally and cross-functionally, or even sometimes team members that are fantastic for a certain phase, but somebody else needs to kind of jump into that particular role for the next phase. And so you see all these things that, kind of break and change and are challenged by, growth. And whether that's companies like an Amazon or, Apptio or Smartsheet or Snowflake, we have experience through the whole journey. And so in a sense, if we invest really, really early, we get to be there with amazing founders for the entire journey of the company. But sometimes we get involved a little bit later. I think we can often spot, opportunities that are not maybe fully appreciated at the Series B stage, but have found some product market fit and are breaking out. I remember, sitting down with Bob Muglia and my partner Soma to talk about Snowflake the year they were growing from like 3 to 12 million in revenue. And you could see the cohort data and that there was something really special going on. And at the time they were only on AWS. And of course we could go talk to our friends, Mike Clayville and Charlie Bell and others at AWS. And it turned out that, the perspectives we got from that gave us the conviction to invest at that stage. So the one other thing I would say is that on the founders at an early stage, which is the thing I love the most, some of the next gen companies now that we're backing like Re.ai and Udemy and Gradial, these founders have founder market fit. They are passionate about the problem they're trying to solve. They get the context of why it could be solved better than it could ever be solved before. And they have some really compelling ideas of what they're planning to build. The question that, they are trying to answer is what's the problem? What's the solution to the problem we have passion to solve? The question we're trying to answer is why them? Why is this the team that's going to solve it better than anybody else in the world?
From your vantage point, how do you describe the state of the market today, and what has changed, especially post 2021? What is the change in founder behavior, kind of investor expectations, both on your side and kind of follow-on investors that you see, and the company building?
A few things I'll start with. One is actually, I think that venture has changed a lot. I think at the we just raised our 10th fund, and combining, those two stages that we invest at, it's a $770 million fund. That's a big fund. It was actually the 15th largest fund. We closed it just at the beginning of this year, but if you kind of count all the funds that were raised last year. And so, there's this group of maybe 10 or 20, funds and firms that are raised in any given year that are kind of 500 million and above. And then there's another 450 funds, at least last year, that were raised that on average were less than 100 million. And so you've got these really different kind of barbells of kind of venture firms. We like to think, of course, at 770, we're kind of the best of both worlds because we're not multi-billion-dollar fund, that it may not be as personalized for you in terms of the relationship and the commitment to your success. And we're not so small that we can't be with you from day one for the long run with our capital, with our expertise, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that's changing. There's also some great, really early stage pre-seed groups and angel groups and individuals that I think is much more of a thing than it was even a decade ago. The other piece is you ask about the founder question. And I think right now we're in an interesting time where disruption has never been greater. And so there's an incredible movement of folks into, I want to go start something and I want to go find partners that want to be there with me for the journey. And that's really great news. I think you're also finding a trending back towards younger founders. I mean, the number of founders I've met in the last 6 months that are, I just dropped out of X, whether X is Stanford or Dartmouth or Harvard or UVA or wherever, there's a very big moment of, wow, anything's possible and I'm going to take my shot. And actually, again, we love that, So then the question that's a little bit kind of counter to that, kind of broadly is, kind of this sort of founder investor alignment, and whether that shows up in some of the early terms that people are trying to negotiate into early rounds, or whether it shows up in M&A transactions. You've seen a lot of these somewhat unusual transactions the last couple of years, originally partly because of some of the concerns about, kind of regulatory blocking of deals. So you saw deals that, Microsoft and Amazon and Google and others did that were oddly structured, like the Adept deal and some other ones. And now you've just seen that get carried forward into some other oddly structured deals like the Scale AI deal or this whole Windsurf deal. I don't know where that goes over time. I think it creates kind of complex misalignment between founders and investors who are putting their capital to work, rolling up their sleeves, trying to build value. And so at the end of the day, which is what we've always believed, I think one of the things that hasn't changed is you got to earn your stripes every day and build an authentic, trust-based relationship with the founders, to navigate each of the big decisions in the journey.
Yeah. And you touched upon M&A a little bit there we're seeing an uptick there, especially on the kind of the M&A and planning for IPO, and some of them went earlier this year as well. Kind of diving into that, Madrona has seen some notable wins. Statistic is one of them, Lexion, Octo AI, Rover, and a few more. What do these stories tell about kind of the landscape that you're seeing from your lens, and what signals is interesting that you're watching for the next wave of what's to come going into next year?
Yeah, so I think that M&A is picking up, and there's a couple of trends there. One is you have seen an increase in private-to-private transactions, which are historically hard to be successful. But I think that there's a number of companies saying, "Hey, we've been around maybe since the late teens, or beginning of the 20s." There was this whole run up in valuations, and we were still in a zero interest rate environment, and so capital was pretty cheap. And then there's sort of mixed track records of how well those companies executed. And so if you can get alignment of two private companies, you can do really special things. Now, StatSig being bought by OpenAI is technically a private to private. That's a little bit of a different example. But we've certainly seen in our portfolio some that have been announced. There's some that are kind of in process right now that may happen. And I think you are seeing more of that. What I think you're also seeing is that the strategics are back in the game. You've had big acquisitions, ServiceNow, MoveWorks as an example, here this year. And so I think that that's a very positive trend where the strategics, because of some of the reasons we were talking about before from a kind of regulatory oversight perspective, were a lot more hesitant. And so that's a positive development. The third thing is gosh, the public markets are at all-time highs. And so I'm still a little perplexed as to why we haven't had more IPOs. I think there's a mindset I don't fully agree with by some in Silicon Valley of, wait as long as you possibly can to go public. But let's look at companies like Figma and CoreWeave that have gone public and traded very well this year. And I'm hopeful that we'll see more of that in the market, because that also is a positive read-through on M&A. Because if you're having credible and successful IPOs, then you actually have some better, kind of market leverage, candidly, if you're a company that somebody's approaching about an M&A transaction. So I think we'll see more of that. The private equity firms are busy too. Part of that is because a lot of them raised funds in 2021 and were a little cautious in 22 and 23 to put capital to work. And so they're kind of a little more aggressive at looking for opportunities. Smartsheet, which is a company I was involved with for many years, got taken private by Vista and Blackstone this year. Rover got taken private by Blackstone last year. So I think we're seeing some of those things as well. One other perspective on this, which is a very important one, the limited partner. And happily for us, we've had a good number of outcomes. I just mentioned a handful of them, but that has not been generally true, either in venture or private equity. And so you have these limited partners saying, hey, when am I going to see some more liquidity? When am I going to see some more distributions to the paid in capital that I put in? So there's some pressure there. That's compounded on the venture side by a lot of these funds were raised in 2021, 2020. So they're getting close to the end of their initial investment period. There's also pressure that a lot of these endowments that are the funders have, got new taxes and new constraints and new demands on their cash flow. So it's lots of trickiness. One thing we have not been involved with, but we certainly heard a lot about, is a greater a tendency towards venture firms doing secondaries and selling some of their companies, to get liquidity so they can start to generate more DPI. And we've seen a little bit of that read through in employees and others wanting greater liquidity in secondary. So I think the secondary market has become a much bigger factor than certainly it was a decade ago.
Now let's talk about the big milestone, the Madrona's 30th anniversary. Having Satya on the stage was such a powerful moment. What reflections stood out from that celebration?
Well, it was so fun to be there with our investors and the founders, of the active current ones, and many that came back, and Madrona alumni too. So we really tried to bring the broader community together for that celebration. And Satya has been a longtime friend of the firm. We've known him in many different contexts. And what's impressive is to think about the story there at Microsoft, and he really focused on leading with a sort of a humility that's an authentic humility, a real desire to listen. And I think putting a big emphasis on that has served him and the company well. He also, I think, became more externally focused than internally focused. There was lots of, different competing projects inside Microsoft. And I think he was more like, let's go figure out what's going on outside of our walls. And then also becoming more customer focused versus competitor focused. And to think of how much that company has thrived. I mean, that company had a market cap of $300 billion when Satya took over. And today their market cap is, approaching $4 trillion. And so you're talking about a 12, 13x increase in a company that was, really the only company that had been kind of enduring from a market cap leadership perspective in technology for the last 30, 40 years. Now, you've had a few that have had incredible rises like NVIDIA recently. You've had, Oracle make kind of an incredible comeback in the last handful of years with a really good bet on the cloud, following the lead of Amazon and Microsoft. But I think those attributes of Satya say a lot. And I think it's impressive even just recently where he, has done some things to reorganize his business so that he can, step, back a little bit to the strategic pace of change. We have this Intelligent Application 40, this list that we've published for the last 5 years that gets nominated and voted on by the venture community and the tech community. We pull in some different data. And that list, what's interesting about that list, we just had the big AI conference, which we can talk about. That list has had only one company over the 5 years. These are all private companies. Only one company that's been on the list all 5 years, which is Databricks. That list, in the terms of the change, last year's list to this year's list, there's only 13 repeats of the 40 companies on the list. So 27 companies churned, almost 70% of the companies. And that just shows while we're in a very disruptive time, we're also in a time where it's hard to be durable. And so the durability that Satya and the team at Microsoft, and I would say, for that matter, the incredible job that Andy and his team are doing at Amazon as well. Of course, we're closer with those two given our strong focus here in Seattle. It's just phenomenal.
Let's bring it back to Seattle. Madrona has been instrumental in building the tech ecosystem. What do you think has worked particularly well, and where do you see the untapped potential for the next generation of startups?
Well, I do think it's very much a we, and the we is the well beyond Madrona and amazing companies and founders we get to back. It's we talk about it as the bigger pie, and how do we expand the pie of opportunity in Seattle and the Pacific Northwest? We have that mindset and others come along and share in that mindset, which they do, there's amazing things that can happen. And here we are with not only 2 of the 5 by market cap largest companies in the world, right? In Microsoft and Amazon, but so many other incredible companies that are here, whether it's in the consumer side, the Nordstroms and Starbucks and Costco's of the world, T-Mobile's here on the telecom side, and all these other great technology companies. Then you also have incredible research institutions like the University of Washington, the Artificial Intelligence, Institute, Allen Institute for AI, as it's known, or AI2. And, I could go down the list, right? Fred Hutch Cancer Center, incredible stuff going on in biotech. We've had Nobel Prizes each of the last 2 years in the life sciences, for example. So you've got this critical mass, but you've got to be able to kind of share ideas with one another and then, kind of have this kind of cross-population of not only where are the problems that are existing at the leading edge of, problem spaces, but what are the potential solutions? That's why it helps that we also have over 10,000 people from Google here and 10,000 people from Meta here and a couple thousand of folks from Apple and a lot of their AI teams. So we're fortunate to have that talent. I think that some recent reports said that Seattle's second only to Silicon Valley in terms of the absolute population of AI talent. And then you've got a lot of people now, which was not the case 25 years ago when I came here, that can really help you with the product side and the go-to-market side to build real businesses. I've said to a lot of folks, models are not all you need to be successful in the AI world. The AI world is a reasoning revolution. It's about reasoning machines. Reasoning machines have models, they have tools, they have context, they have data. They've got all kinds of things that you need to be successful. And you need folks that can understand that from a product sensibilities perspective and then ultimately build a viable business model around it.
And, AI, the topic that we cannot miss to talk about. Where do you see that we are in the AI cycle, and what excites you the most on what's ahead? When I talk to my investor friends, pretty much everybody is investing in AI today. Either you're an AI company or there's a vacuum here. So
Yes.
is it hype versus reality? Would love to get your perspective.
Well, I'm a very big believer in this transformational change. I do think it is akin to the Industrial Revolution 150 years ago, the technological revolution. I mean, the Industrial Revolution was physical machines, mechanical machines. The technology revolution was computational machines. And this revolution, which I like to think of it as the reasoning revolution, is about these reasoning machines. And again, that's not strictly a model or even a set of models, but those models in the context of solving a problem. So whether that's a company like Gradial that does it for enterprise marketing content execution, or a company like Synthesize that does it for gene expression, how does a gene turn on? What does it create when it turns on? Is it doing that in a normal, healthy way or some other way? Or you could go down this incredible list of examples. I think the thing to keep in mind here is the model companies that are the leading edge model companies are, moving up the stack of different things they're trying to do. And so then the question from a venture perspective is, well, what are some of the horizontal layers? Maybe that is kind of an agentic browser or an agentic search engine or an agentic ability to use vision for computer use. I think there's some horizontal, there's some things in payments. If there's no card and no human present, then how do you actually complete a transaction with your agent? And a lot needs to change up and down the payment stack. There's a company called Nakuda that does that we're investors in. So there's these horizontal slices. I'm even more excited about the vertical slices because these vertical slices can create a reinforcement learning based loop or a reasoning flywheel, where data comes in, context gets set, models leverage that, and then get outputs. You take actions against those outputs. Now you got new data, and you use that data to reinforce and improve the application itself, the flywheel of an application. So I think there's a lot to be excited about. We're very appreciative that, the big tech companies are spending hundreds of billions of dollars in infrastructure to both provide the underlying infrastructure and the models. We just need to be smart about how we and others pick their spots.
You've navigated multiple venture cycles from dot-com bust to AI boom. What are some of the enduring lessons that you've learned about timing, founder relationships, and the building companies that last?
Well, I do think that having a long-term mindset is super valuable. But you got to balance that with what are the short-term deliverables. So I think a lot of this, the overall answer is going to be, sort of finding your balance, long-term mindset and short-term deliverables. Understanding the context of things you can't control, the macro, while you're driving for impact on the things you can control, which are in the micro of your customers, your product, your way you're going to market, your team. And so, I can't control, inflation, right? But I have to deal with inflation, whether it's a tailwind as it was for a decade, or now is, becoming, a modest headwind. I think it's not as much a headwind as some people articulate. Trade, and the changes in the trade dynamic, right? That's more of a headwind. Or, candidly, I'm not all that pleased with the, this new H-1B visa policy. One, on first principles, because I think we want to attract and retain the brightest people in the world in America. Secondly, it's more detrimental to startups, because startups can't just afford $100,000 to, have somebody, get an H-1B visa to come work for them. And so that's going to, both limit, kind of access to talent for startups in particular, but it's also going to limit, a lot of that great talent coming to the United States. And so you might end up hiring them, but they work remotely. That doesn't make any sense. So I think it's long-term mindset. It's focused on, kind of the things you can control. And then I think it's also, being able to parse out. Sometimes people can, they conflate things too much. And you want to try to be simplifiers versus complexifiers, and try to triangulate all the data you're getting, simplify it, and then make decisions and learn from them. One of the great, phrases and principles at Amazon is this idea of one-way doors and two-way doors. And, a two-way door is one you can walk in and you can walk out of. If that's the case, make a decision quickly, see what happens. You can always walk back out. One-way doors are more consequential, big change in pricing and packaging or whatever it might be, right? Those things you got to take a lot of time to think about, but ultimately you got to decide too.
If you have to give one piece of advice to founder that are building companies for tomorrow, especially in the market that requires today resilience and boldness, what would that be?
Yeah, I think of it as like thinking in a flywheel. And the flywheel starts with genuine curiosity. You're really open to the data that's out there and getting that data. Then the problem is that you get conflicting data. And so as you kind of go around the flywheel from curiosity into triangulation, which is the ability to process and synthesize all that data and come up with a point of view. And then once you all have come to a point of view, you got to act. You got to decide and you got to act. You can't be, paralyzed, by the fact that there's never a clear answer. And so act, and now you've got new data and you can adjust and have agility. And so that's how the flywheel goes around from curiosity, triangulation, decision-making, agility. And then you're back to curiosity again.
Great advice, Matt. Thank you so much for joining us today. Your insights are extremely valuable to our listeners. Thank you so much for tuning into MUFG in Conversation.
Well, it was my pleasure, Priya. Thanks for having me on the show.
Thank you.